In the private dining room of a prestigious Cantonese restaurant in the heart of Singapore's central business district, pristine porcelain dishes sat untouched on the heavy rosewood table. The subtle aroma and delicate presentation of the food, crafted from the finest ingredients, spoke of its exorbitant cost, yet no one dared lift their chopsticks. A young couple, Chloe Tan and Lim Junji, sat at the center of the table, their heads bowed in shame as if they were criminals on trial. They were meant to be the guests of honor at this formal meeting of their families, but now they were the epicenter of a brewing tragedy. Across from them sat Chloe's parents. Her father, Tan Kien Hock, was the founder and CEO of Global Harvest Foods, a giant in the nation's food import and distribution industry. Her mother, Eleanor, was the daughter of a distinguished Peranakan family with a long lineage of prominent lawyers. The couple's faces, usually composed with an air of sophisticated grace, were now contorted with a contempt and fury that cracked their elegant facade. "Mr. Tan finally broke the silence, his voice as cold and menacing as a surgeon's scalpel. "What is the meaning of this, Junji? Or perhaps I don't need to address you so formally anymore. Your father. To think he would have the audacity to show up to this meeting in the middle of the CBD driving that." Junji couldn't lift his head. A cold sweat trickled down his spine and his ears burned with humiliation. The memory of what had transpired an hour ago in the restaurant's valet area was a suffocating nightmare. His father's arrival slightly late had been a scene of pure shock. Into a driveway lined with polished Mercedes-Benzes, Porsches and Bentleys, a rickety mud-splattered Nissan lorry had chugged and sputtered, its engine rattling violently. When his father, Lim Ah-seng, emerged from the driver's seat, he was still in his work attire, a simple faded polo shirt and dark trousers. His sun-drenched tan face was etched with deep lines, his hands were calloused and rough, and his worn-out work boots were caked in earth. He looked like an artifact from another world, jarringly out of place amidst the city's sleek opulence. Ignoring the flustered valet's attempts to stop him, Ah-seng had parked the lorry in a prime spot. He then lowered the tailgate and proudly lifted out several large crates filled with organic kale, heirloom tomatoes and other vegetables, announcing they were from his own farm. This entire spectacle was witnessed by Chloe's parents, who had arrived early and were waiting. The expression on their faces was not mere surprise. It was a profound horror mixed with disgust, a sense of outrage that their refined world had been violated by something so common. Eleanor had silently covered her mouth with a silk handkerchief while Mr. Tan's face had drained of all color. Now inside the private room, the air was still frozen from that initial shock. "Even if he's just a farmer from the countryside, how can he be so clueless about the world?" Mr. Tan continued, his voice rising. "This isn't some ulu farm in Kranji, this is Singapore, the heart of the city. This is a meeting to discuss the union of our two families, a lifelong commitment for my daughter and your son. And he brings a lorry, a lorry." The words echoed with disdain. Mr. Tan wanted to slam his fist on the table, but the last vestiges of his public decorum held him back. Instead, he shot a piercing glare at Junji's father. Lim Ah-seng sat opposite his son, next to the Tans, perfectly poised. He had changed out of his work clothes into a simple but clean suit in the restaurant's washroom, but he couldn't hide the faint scent of soil and the rugged aura that clung to him. He remained expressionless even in the face of Mr. Tan's scathing insults, his deep, unreadable eyes fixed on the other man. "Being poor isn't a crime," Mr. Tan declared. "But when poverty leads to ignorance and a complete lack of class, it is a disgrace. Today I've seen the true standing of your family. I cannot allow my Chloe to marry into such a backward household and suffer for the rest of her life. This engagement is off. It's best we end this cleanly now. The engagement is off." The words pierced Junji's heart like shards of ice. He could hear Chloe's soft sobs beside him. Desperately, he looked up at her father. "Mr. Tan, that's too harsh. My father is a simple man from the countryside. He isn't good at expressing himself, and he just wanted to bring you the best things he had, the crops he grew with his own hands. The lorry is like his personal car. He's driven it his whole life. He meant no harm, I swear. Please, it's just a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" It was Eleanor who interjected, her voice sharp and condescending. She elegantly dabbed her lips with a napkin, her eyes scanning Junji from head to toe. "I thought you were a bright and proper young man, Junji. That's why, even though your background was lacking, I was willing to give my blessing if Chloe was happy. But I was wrong. It seems the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. With a father like that, what can we expect from the son? You learn what you see." It was then that Lim Ah-seng, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke. His voice was low and heavy like the turning of soil. "What great sin is a lorry that you must insult my son as well?" Every head in the room turned towards him. Ah Sung was still motionless, his gaze locked with the Tan's. His eyes held no anger or sadness, only a cold, profound stillness. Mr. Tan, to you that vehicle is just a piece of scrap metal. A symbol of an ignorant old man who plays in the dirt. But that lorry was passed down to me by my father. It holds the sweat and tears of my entire youth. I raised my son Junji in the passenger seat of that lorry. I sent him to university with the money I earned driving it. To me, that lorry is hundreds, thousands of times more precious than the flashy European cars you drive. His words were not sharp, but they carried a weight that struck a nerve. Eleanor scoffed in disbelief. Oh, are you trying to lecture us now, and so what? You brought that precious lorry here and ruined everything. Is that something you're proud of? I am not boasting. I am stating a fact, Ah Sung replied calmly. The values you hold dear and the values I cherish are simply different. You judge people by their shiny exteriors and their bank accounts. I believe in the value of sweat and the honesty of the land. And that is what I taught my son. Ah Sung slowly rose from his seat. All eyes followed him. He bent down and patted his son's shoulder reassuringly. Then he turned to face Mr. Tan and his wife. Frankly, I am grateful that you have called off this marriage, he said. It seems heaven has saved me from sending my precious son into a family as hollow as yours. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the room. His back was not bent. The back of a farmer who had battled the earth his entire life seemed stronger and more resolute than that of any corporate CEO. Father Junji cried, rushing out after him. In the empty room, only the cold fury of the Tans and the heartbroken sobs of Chloe remained. Mr. Tan trembled, his fists clenched. The humiliation of being lectured by a simple old farmer was unbearable. Outside, Lim Ah Sung walked to his lorry. Junji followed, his voice choked with tears. Father, I'm so sorry. I should have explained things better beforehand. This is all my fault. Ah Sung said nothing. He climbed into the driver's seat, his face as inscrutable as a dark sea at midnight. It was impossible to tell if he was angry, sad, or simply tired. He started the engine. The loud rattling sound shattered the quiet of the car park. Get in, son. Let's go home. Junji silently climbed into the passenger seat, a spot he had occupied countless times as a child. But today the familiar feel of the worn-out seat felt unusually cold. The lorry slowly pulled out of the restaurant's driveway, the dazzling lights of the Singapore skyline raining down on the silent father and son. Ah Sung glanced in the rearview mirror at the shrinking restaurant. For a moment his eyes glinted like ice. That old lorry. That piece of scrap metal. I will show you. I will show you how the very thing you scorned and despised will bring your entire world crashing down. In his heart he began to sharpen the blade of his revenge. All through the night the lorry traveled. The rattling engine carried the son's quiet sobs and the father's profound silence, leaving the asphalt of the city behind, heading north on the BKE, further and further north. As dawn began to break, the familiar scent of damp earth and greenery filled the air. They had finally arrived home. Their home was not the small rustic farmhouse one might imagine. It was a massive modern complex situated in the middle of a vast agricultural expanse in Kranji, looking more like a futuristic fortress than a farm. Dozens of enormous glass greenhouses glittered like diamonds in the morning sun, and automated farming equipment moved silently between them like ghosts. This was the kingdom of Lim Ah Sung, his entire world. Though he was known simply as a farmer, he was far more. He was an innovator who had revolutionized Singapore's agricultural scene, the hidden chairman of Aggrivation Holdings, which operated thousands of square meters of high-tech smart farms. The premium organic produce he grew was supplied exclusively to the nation's top hotels, Michelin-starred restaurants, and the VVIP clients of high-end supermarkets. Most people knew the CEO of Aggrivation as a young, brilliant professional, but only a handful of his closest confidants knew that the true owner, the man pulling all the strings, was the unassuming Lim Ah Sung. He loved displaying his wealth and influence. What mattered to him was not money or fame, but the land itself and the value of honest labor. He had never told his son Junjae the full extent of his business, allowing him to believe he was just a reasonably successful farmer. He never wanted his son to become arrogant because of wealth or to forget the value of sweat. But now the time had come to use everything he had built. Parking the lorry in a corner of a massive warehouse, Ah Sung walked towards his office, without a word to his son. The office was located at the highest point of the complex, offering a panoramic view of his kingdom. Looking out over his domain, he picked up the intercom and called his secretary. David, please come to my office. A moment later, a middle-aged man in a sharp suit entered. It was David Chen, the chief operating officer who managed all of Aggravation's practical affairs. He had been by Ah Seng's side for over 20 years, a loyal confidant and his only true friend. Boss, how was the meeting in town? Young Master Junji doesn't look too well. Ah Seng sank deep into his chair and closed his eyes. The humiliating moments from the previous night flashed through his mind, a look of horror on his prospective in-laws' faces, their words calling poverty a disgrace, the crushed expression on his son's face. Each memory was a dagger in his heart. The engagement is off. What do you mean, boss? David's face registered his shock. Ah Seng slowly opened his eyes and recounted the events of the previous night. His voice was devoid of emotion, but David could read a cold fury and deep hurt hidden between the lines. How dare they insult you like that? Are they out of their minds? David's voice trembled with anger. Ah Seng raised a hand to silence him. It's done. What matters now is what comes next. He rose and walked to the large window, his gaze directed north towards the distant city skyline. That Mr. Tan? What's the name of his company again? Global Harvest. Yes, that's right. Global Harvest Foods, one of the largest food distributors and F&B franchise operators in the country. They've recently expanded aggressively into the premium organic market. I see. He has an eye for trends. Ah Seng mused, a cold smile forming on his lips. But his eyes are set so high that he fails to see what's truly important right beneath his feet. The plan for revenge was already taking shape in his mind, a detailed blueprint. He wasn't interested in simple embarrassment. He intended to shake the very foundations of the castle Kian Hok had spent a lifetime building, to make it crumble from the ground up. And his weapon would be the very earth the man so despised. David, listen carefully to what I am about to say. Ah Seng called David to his desk. On a large monitor he brought up a complex array of data and graphs, a comprehensive map of Singapore's entire food supply chain. I want a complete list of Global Harvest's key suppliers. Every farm, every cooperative, every distributor they work with, from Malaysia to our local farms. I want it all. Pay special attention to their premium organic line. I need to know which farms, what products, what prices, and what contract terms. Every single detail. Yes, boss. But what for? It will be our weapon to destroy them. Ah Seng continued, his voice calm, but his resolve as hard as steel. As soon as we have the list, we move. We will contact their core suppliers one by one. And we will offer to buy their entire stock for double, no triple the price they're getting from Global Harvest. The entire stock without exception, David gasped. This was an act that would shatter market stability, a reckless but devastatingly effective strategy that only someone with immense capital could even dream of attempting. Boss, the losses we'd incur would be enormous. This will completely disrupt market prices. Losses? This isn't the time to worry about that, Ah Seng retorted. Money can be earned again. But my son's dignity, the hurt he suffered, that cannot be healed with money. To them money is everything. But not to me. I will show them. I will show them just how fragile their prosperous world is. I will show them that the very ground they stand on can be swept away overnight by the hands of the dirt-digging farmers they look down upon. His eyes burned like embers. This was more than revenge, it was a battle for the pride of a man who had lived his life by the land. And one more thing. Mobilize our entire network of cold storage facilities and logistics. I want every single vegetable we buy to be stored perfectly with no loss of freshness. Soon enough, Global Harvest will be scrambling to find fresh produce in the market. Maybe then we can sell it back to them at an exorbitant price. Though frankly, I'd rather let it all rot than sell them a single leaf. The plan was meticulous and brutal. It was designed to slowly but surely suffocate Kian Hok. For a food distributor, a stable supply chain and fresh quality are paramount. Ah Seng was aiming directly for the heart. Get ready, David. We are about to witness something interesting. Watch closely how an old farmer treated worse than his lorry uses nothing but the earth to bring down a mighty fortress. David bowed his head in silence. He had never seen this side of his boss before. The man who was always as steady as the earth and as patient as the mountains was now the very embodiment of nature's fury. A great storm was coming. And under the glittering lights of Singapore, intoxicated by their own success, the Tan family had no idea that the very ground beneath their feet was about to give way. On the 30th floor of the Global Harvest Tower, Tan Kian Hok's office exuded the confidence and arrogance of a successful tycoon. A panoramic window offered a stunning view of the Marina Bay skyline. The handcrafted Italian rosewood desk, the abstract painting by a famous artist on the wall, everything was a testament to his wealth and power. He puffed on an expensive cigar, replaying the unpleasant events of the previous night. The insult from the countryside bumpkin still enraged him, but in a way he was also relieved. It was a blessing to have cut ties with such a family before it was too late. You can't escape your roots, he muttered to himself, leaning back in his chair. His daughter Chloe had been crying in her room since last evening, but he was sure she would get over it. He couldn't let a fleeting emotion tie his daughter's life to such a low-class family. The young man Junji was decent enough, but his background had ruined everything. Just then his secretary cautiously opened the door. "Sir, the head of procurement is here for an urgent matter." "Send him in," Kien Hok gestured dismissively. A moment later the procurement head, his face pale, rushed into the office. "Sir, we have a huge problem." "Stop panicking and report calmly," Kien Hok said, exhaling a long plume of cigar smoke. Despite his relaxed demeanor, the manager's voice was trembling with urgency. "Our largest supplier for vegetables from the Cameron Highlands has suddenly terminated their contract. They've informed us this morning that they are halting all shipments effective immediately." Kien Hok frowned. "Terminate the contract? Are they aware of the penalty clause? Who do they think we are? Contact their director immediately and inform him he'll be paying double the penalty." "That's the thing, sir. They said they don't care if they have to pay 3 times the penalty. Another company has appeared and offered to buy their entire harvest at more than double our contracted price." What? Kien Hok finally stubbed out his cigar. This was no simple change of heart. Someone was deliberately interfering. "Did you find out which company?" "They only said it's a new agricultural firm, but they won't give us any specific information. We've made some calls, but it's not a known player in the industry." Kien Hok paused, thinking. It could be a competitor playing dirty. But to corner the market by completely ignoring prices was a strategy that would cause massive financial bleeding. Only a company with extraordinary financial backing could attempt such a thing. "Leave that farm for now. Find alternative suppliers quickly. It's not the only farm in the Highlands. There are plenty of others," he ordered. "We need to make an example of them. Make sure they understand what happens when you cut ties with Global Harvest." "Yes, sir." The procurement head hurried out. Kien Hok was about to relight his cigar but stopped, an uneasy feeling creeping over him. He quickly shook his head. He had weathered countless storms in this industry for decades. He was confident he could handle a problem of this scale, but that was only the beginning. That afternoon Kien Hok's phone began to ring off the hook. It wasn't just the Cameron Highlands. Organic farms in Lim Chu Kang, large-scale onion suppliers in Malaysia, hydroponic cooperatives in Singapore, one by one Global Harvest's core suppliers were all terminating their contracts. The reason was always the same: a mysterious company had appeared offering far higher prices and signing exclusive deals for their entire output. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Kien Hok called an emergency board meeting. The atmosphere in the conference room was grim. "What is going on? How can all our suppliers turn their backs on us overnight? Have you identified the mastermind behind this yet?" Kien Hok roared. The executives could only lower their heads. "Our apologies, sir. They are moving like a ghost organization, using multiple shell companies to sign contracts simultaneously. It's making it very difficult to trace the source. The only thing we know for sure is that their financial power is beyond imagination." One executive cautiously spoke up. "Could it be foreign capital trying to take over the local agricultural market?" "Nonsense. Why would any foreign investor pour this kind of money into a low-margin market like agriculture?" Kien Hok snapped, though he too was frustrated by the lack of answers. Meanwhile, a crisis was unfolding at Global Harvest's chain of supermarkets and high-end grocers across the island. The fresh produce aisles, once the pride of their stores, began to look sparse and empty. They scrambled to fill the shelves with produce from smaller second-tier farms, but the quality and freshness were nowhere near their previous standards. Customer complaints flooded in. "How can you call this organic? This isn't the Global Harvest quality I'm used to. The prices are the same, but the products are terrible." The customer service hotline was paralyzed with angry calls. Online forums and social media were filled with posts criticizing Global Harvest's declining standards. News articles with headlines like "Global Harvest loses its way and deceiving a nation of foodies" began to appear. The company's stock price began to plummet. Returning home, Kien Hok collapsed onto the sofa, exhausted. He had never felt so helpless. It was like being surrounded by an invisible enemy. His wife Eleanor approached and began to massage his shoulders. There is something wrong at the office, you look dreadful. Don't worry about it. It's nothing, he grumbled, though his heart felt heavy as lead. He tried to push away the thought, but his mind drifted back to the previous day. The rustic old man, the lorry, the smell of earth. Could it be? No, impossible. He scoffed at his own thought. How could a simple old farmer orchestrate something so massive, a man with no money, no connections, no information? How could he possibly dare to challenge him? How is Chloe still locked in her room? I think she keeps calling that Junji boy, but he's not picking up. Kian Hok clicked his tongue. Good. The sooner she forgets about him, the better. The nerve of those people. He once again let his anger flare, convincing himself that this chaos was just a string of bad luck. He never imagined that the invisible enemy was the very old farmer he had mocked and despised. He had no idea that the turmoil he was experiencing was merely the prelude to a grand symphony of revenge, and that its final sharp note was aimed directly at his throat. The gears of revenge turned precisely as Lim Ah Seng had planned. In the central control room of Aggravation's headquarters, a giant screen displayed the real-time status of Singapore's agricultural distribution network. The red dots representing Global Harvest supply lines were turning blue one by one under Ah Seng's command. It was like watching the territory of a vast empire being slowly conquered. The vegetable cooperative in Johor has been fully secured. The primary organic farms in Lim Chu Kang are now contracted to us. David's reports were relentless. Ah Seng, munching on a tomato freshly picked from his own greenhouse, stared silently at the screen. His expression was as serene as a farmer before a harvest, but his eyes were sharp like a hawk's tracking its prey. He wasn't satisfied with merely strangling Global Harvest. He planned to completely upend the premium organic market that Kian Hok was so proud of. Kian Hok always preached about consumer health and safe food in media interviews, but Ah Seng knew it was all just a hollow slogan. For him, the premium label was just a tool to charge higher prices. What's the status of the produce we've acquired? As instructed, it's being distributed to our cold storage facilities across the island, maintained at optimal freshness. The volume is so immense that our storage capacity will soon be full. That's fine. We can build more warehouses, Ah Seng said. What's crucial is that none of it leaks into the open market. Especially not to Global Harvest. Not a single stem should reach them. Understood, sir. But if we just keep stockpiling without selling, David trailed off. Even for a financial powerhouse like Aggravation, this level of hemorrhaging was a huge burden. Produce that wasn't sold would eventually turn into a massive loss. Ah Seng smiled faintly, as if reading David's mind. Don't you worry. We didn't buy all this just to let it rot. We have a very important use for it. His gaze shifted to a small folder on the corner of the screen labeled Community Outreach. Revenge served cold, but with a warm justification. That was Lim Ah Seng's way. A few days later, intriguing stories began appearing in the media. Anonymous philanthropists donated tons of organic produce to soup kitchens. Amidst soaring food prices, a wave of kindness reaches shelters and low-income families. Their articles reported that while produce prices were skyrocketing due to an unexplained supply shortage, a mysterious agricultural firm had donated millions of dollars worth of premium organic produce to the nation's needy. Journalists tried to uncover the identity of this angel donor, but the company remained completely anonymous. The stories created a massive public stir, especially among consumers who were already disgruntled with Global Harvest's declining quality and rising prices. Now that's a real toke. Not like the money-grabbing Global Harvest. I don't know who they are, but I'd trust and buy their products in a heartbeat. Please review yourselves. Public opinion rapidly turned against Global Harvest. The contrast between the greedy corporation and the anonymous philanthropist was stark and memorable. In his office, Kian Hok crumpled the newspaper after reading the article. Are they kidding me? They cornered the entire market supply just to give it away for free. What kind of madman is this? He was seething. He was desperate for produce to sell while someone else was earning praise and goodwill by giving it away. His opponent wasn't playing the same game. This wasn't about profit. This was a direct personal attack on him and his company. Find them. I want you to find out who is behind this now. At Kian Hok's command, all of Global Harvest's resources were mobilized. Finally, they managed to trace the source of the immense capital hidden behind the numerous shell companies. The name was Aggravation Holdings. It was a legendary name even among industry insiders, known for its cutting-edge smart farm technology and massive land holdings, but shrouded in secrecy. Aggravation Holdings. Kian Hok had heard the name before. They were notoriously private, so he had never had direct dealings with them, but he knew their produce was of unparalleled quality. Global Harvest had tried to secure a supply contract with them several times only to be rejected on each occasion. Why would they attack us? We have no history with them. Kian Hawk wondered aloud, completely bewildered. Just then, his secretary who had been delivering the report spoke cautiously. Sir, just in case, I looked up Aggravation's business profile. The CEO is a professional manager but the ultimate beneficial owner, his name is… What is it? Spit it out, Lim Ah-seng. The moment the name hit Kian Hawk's ears, the image of the rustic old man who had stared him down at the family meeting flashed in his mind. The man who arrived in a lorry, the man he had insulted for being a dirt digger. No. It can't be. Kian Hawk muttered in disbelief. The man he thought was a poor farmer from Kranji was the shadowy tycoon controlling Singapore's most advanced agricultural empire. The shock left him momentarily speechless. All the pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. Why now? Why they were attacking him in such an illogical, brutal manner? This wasn't a business rivalry. It was a meticulously calculated personal vendetta. The man he had scorned and trampled upon was now using his most powerful weapon, the power of the land, to bring judgment upon him. That old man. Kian Hawk trembled, his fists clenched. A wave of fear and rage washed over him. The moment he realized who his enemy was, a chill ran down his spine. This was just the beginning of the fight, and he was already losing the most important assets: market trust and consumer loyalty. The shock of discovering the truth quickly morphed into rage, and then into an unbearable sense of humiliation. To be toyed with by the very dirt-stained old man he had so thoroughly despised, the realization tore his pride to shreds. Lim Ah-seng, you dare to come after me, he roared, pacing his office like a caged animal. Everything was now crystal clear. The lorry wasn't a symbol of poverty. It may have been a cleverly orchestrated test, a way to gauge Kian Hawk's character while hiding his true identity. And he had failed that test, in the most arrogant and foolish way imaginable. But Tan Kian Hawk was not a man who would go down without a fight. He was a survivor, a veteran of decades in the ruthless world of business. Now that he knew his enemy, it was time for a counterattack. He immediately summoned his legal and public relations teams. I want you to dig up everything you can on Aggravation Holdings and this Lim Ah-seng. Tax evasion, illegal land use, environmental violations, anything. If you find even a speck of dust, blow it up and feed it to the press. A secretive company like that must have skeletons in its closet. He then turned to his PR team with sharp instructions. At the same time, I want you to frame Global Harvest as the victim of a malicious market manipulator. Create a narrative that an unknown entity is destroying the local food distribution ecosystem and that consumers will be the ultimate victims. I want you to appeal to public sympathy. We need to be the righteous underdog in this fight. Global Harvest's counter-offensive was swift and organized. Soon articles disguised as anonymous tip-offs began to appear in several media outlets. The shady side of aggravation, allegations of illegal land clearing. The two faces of $1 million donor farmers exploited in exclusive contracts. The articles skillfully mixed fact and fiction to portray aggravation as an unethical corporation. Ah-seng's decades of pioneering sustainable farming were twisted to make him look like a greedy developer destroying nature for profit. His generous contracts with farmers were spun as predatory monopolistic practices. Simultaneously, Global Harvest released a public statement. Kian Hawk appeared before the cameras himself, his expression grave. My fellow Singaporeans, Global Harvest is currently facing an unprecedented crisis, under attack by an unseen powerful entity. They are using unorthodox methods to monopolize the market, destroying the supply chain. Ultimately, the ones who will suffer the consequences are you, the consumers, and our honest local farmers. We at Global Harvest will fight to the end against this Goliath to protect the food on your tables. Public opinion began to sway. The situation started to look like a messy mudslinging match between two corporate giants. Kian Hawk didn't stop there. He mobilized his network of political contacts. Several influential figures swayed by his lobbying raised the issue in Parliament, calling for a government investigation into these new forms of market disruption. Tax authorities and the Competition and the Consumer Commission of Singapore, CCCS, began to take notice. The knives were now pointed at Lim Ah-seng and aggravation. From his kingdom in Kranji, Ah-seng watched the unfolding situation with quiet composure. David and the other executives could not hide their anxiety. Boss, are you sure about this? Their media campaign is vicious. We need to issue a rebuttal and take legal action. But Ah Seng was unperturbed. He was like a seasoned farmer watching a strong wind blow across his fields. He knew that the wind would eventually die down and the true grain would remain rooted in the earth. Let them be. Let the dogs bark as much as they want. A dog's bark can't bring down a mountain. But both they've seek the tax authorities and the CCCS on us. The very existence of our company could be at risk. Ah Seng rose and looked out the window at his farms. The land he had touched, the crops he had nurtured with his own sweat seemed to give him strength. David, how have we operated for the past few decades? Have we ever once broken the law, used shortcuts, or betrayed the value of our sweat? Never, boss. Then we have nothing to fear. The truth is like the earth. It can be temporarily covered by dust, but it will always be there unchanging. Kian Hawk is just kicking up dust. I am going to destroy the very foundation he stands on. Ah Seng was already preparing his next move. While Kian Hawk was busy fighting a phantom war in the media and political arenas, he was aiming for something more fundamental, more fatal: Global Harvest's cash flow. He began to move funds from his personal accounts, assets that had been untouched for decades. This was a different league from Aggravation's corporate funds, a truly astronomical sum of cash that only Lim Ah Seng could command. David, get me a list of Global Harvest's primary banks and major creditors. Also investigate Han Kian Hawk's personal assets and any outstanding loans. David understood his boss's intention and felt a chill. This was no longer about business disruption. This was a declaration of intent to completely annihilate the opponent. And quietly contact some of the sharpest players in the stock market. Tell them a big storm is coming and there will be plenty to go around. Tell them to be ready to move on my signal. Tan Kian Hak thought he was winning. He believed he had cornered his opponent by manipulating the media and the government. But he had no idea that the real war was just beginning. After the dust storm he had created, Lim Ah Seng was preparing to summon a hurricane that would obliterate the fortress of Global Harvest like a sandcastle, and Kian Hawk would learn in the most painful way possible just how fragile the ground he stood upon truly was. While Tan Kian Hawk was engrossed in his mudslinging campaign, Lim Ah Seng's counterstrike was moving silently and swiftly beneath the surface. His target was clear: to simultaneously demolish the two pillars supporting the behemoth of Global Harvest, its cash flow and its brand value. The first assault was on Global Harvest's main corporate bank. Leveraging Aggravation's massive capital and his own personal wealth, Ah Seng approached the bank as a new high-net-worth client. He deposited hundreds of millions of dollars in cash, quickly earning the absolute trust of the bank's senior management. In the bank's exclusive private banking lounge, sipping on premium tea served by the bank director himself, Ah Seng spoke casually. His attire was still modest, but the account balance he had just established commanded more authority than any designer suit. I hear business is tough for many companies these days, especially for distributors like Global Harvest. The financial pressure must be immense. They must feel secure having you as their main bank. The bank director smiled obsequiously. They are one of our most valued clients, of course. While market conditions have been challenging recently, we are confident they will recover. Ah Seng placed his teacup down and spoke softly. His voice was quiet, but it boomed like thunder in the director's ears. Well, I see things differently. Global Harvest is hanging on by a rotten thread. It's going to collapse. If this bank continues to finance them, you will be dragged down into the mud with them. The director's face tensed. He couldn't dismiss this as the ramblings of just any client. Ah Seng's presence and the sheer size of his deposit were too significant. Mr. Lim, what exactly are you suggesting? If you don't believe me, the market will prove me right soon enough. I have no desire to keep my hard-earned money in a reckless bank that extends credit to a failing company. With those words, Ah Seng stood up and left. The bank director, breaking out in a cold sweat, saw him out. Ah Seng's warning sent shockwaves through the bank's internal departments. The risk management team immediately began a re-evaluation of Global Harvest's financial health and future prospects. Coincidentally, Global Harvest had just applied for a massive new loan to fund the expansion of a logistics hub. The bank's attitude shifted dramatically. The loan application was put on indefinite hold and pressure to service their existing debts began to mount. For Kian Hawk, the news was a bolt from the blue. The second attack took place on the stock market. The traders hired by Ah Seng began to aggressively short sell Global Harvest stock. They skillfully leaked negative information to the market. Reports of quality issues, surging consumer complaints, and rumors of a worsening cash flow crisis, all seeded by Ah Seng himself. Retail investors panicked and began selling off their shares, and soon even institutional investors started to pull out. Global Harvest's stock price went into a free fall. Kian Hok could only watch helplessly as the value of his company evaporated. He wanted to buy back shares to stabilize the price, but with the bank cutting off his credit line, he lacked the funds. He was reduced to seeking loans from private lenders using his personal assets as collateral. Adding insult to injury, Ah Seng's third attack began. This one was aimed directly at the premium brand value that Kian Hok cherished most. Aggravation announced a groundbreaking project. They would open up their proprietary smart farm technology and cultivation know-how to the public. Titled A Transparent Promise for Your Dinner Table, the project allowed consumers to use a mobile app to monitor in real time 24/7 the entire cultivation process of every crop grown by aggravation. The entire journey from seed to sprout to harvest to packaging was made transparent. Even data on soil composition, water purity, and air quality was provided. The impact on the market was seismic. For the first time, consumers could see with their own eyes what truly organic and truly premium meant. It provided a level of trust that was worlds apart from the products sold by Global Harvest, which now seemed to be nothing more than fancy packaging. Then, Aggravation launched a new product line, The Honest Crop, a curated box of produce from this transparent project. It was sold online at a price 30% lower than Global Harvest's premium organic products. The response was explosive. The entire stock was sold out within a minute of its launch, and rave reviews flooded the internet. So this is what real vegetables taste like. The stuff from Global Harvest was just green. I feel so good knowing I can feed this to my children. And the price is so reasonable. Overnight, Global Harvest's premium brand was exposed as an overpriced sham. Consumers began to boycott their stores and sales plummeted. In his office, Kian Hok read the news about the success of the Honest Crop and laughed a hollow, defeated sound. He finally understood. Lim Ah Seng wasn't fighting him. He was winning over the consumers, winning over the market itself. Kian Hok had tried to muddy the waters to smear his opponent, but Ah Seng had unleashed a spring of pure clear water that washed all the mud away. He knew with chilling certainty that this was a battle he could not win. Unlike him, who fought with money and power, Ah Seng was fighting with the most powerful weapons of all, sincerity and trust. And those weapons were forged from the very earth that he had spent his entire life looking down upon. The shadow of defeat loomed dark and heavy behind him. The fall of Global Harvest was faster and more brutal than anyone could have predicted. Its credit lines were severed, its stock price hit rock bottom, and its customers had completely abandoned it. The company, once a titan of the industry, was now on life support with bankruptcy and imminent certainty. Tan Kian Hok aged visibly overnight. His once confident face became haggard, and his eyes, formerly bright with ambition, were now clouded with fear and despair. He ran around desperately trying to secure funding, but word of Global Harvest's instability had already spread throughout the financial world. No one was willing to help. Finally, he had to make the ultimate choice: to swallow his pride and beg his enemy for mercy. Through his secretary, he requested a meeting with Lim Ah Seng. The reply was cold. There is no reason to meet. Kian Hok did not give up. Every day he went to the main gate of Aggravation's headquarters. At first he waited inside his luxury sedan. But Ah Seng paid him no mind. After a few days he got out of his car and began to wait at the gate itself, standing for hours. The formidable CEO was gone, replaced by a tired, defeated old man. After a week of this, Ah Seng finally allowed him in. The meeting was not held in a lavish chairman's office, but in a small rest area inside one of the massive greenhouses, the air thick with the scent of rich soil. Lim Ah Seng was in his usual work clothes, the same attire Kian Hok had once scorned. He wiped a freshly picked cucumber on a towel and offered it to him. You must be hungry. Have one. Kian Hok couldn't bring himself to accept it. With a trembling voice he finally spoke. Mr. Lim, I was wrong. I completely misjudged you. My arrogance has ruined everything. Please stop this. Spare Global Harvest. It's my life's work. Please save my company. He looked ready to fall to his knees. But Ah Seng's expression didn't change as he crunched on his own cucumber. When he finished, he finally spoke, his voice low and quiet but with an edge as sharp as ice. Mr. Yunus Tan, you still don't understand what you did wrong. Do you think this is all because you insulted me and hurt my son? Of course that's how it began. But this is no longer about my personal revenge. He stood and walked slowly through the greenhouse where tens of thousands of tomato plants were being automatically watered and nourished. Look at this, Kian Hak. Look at this life. The power of this land. You've spent your life using it to make money, but have you ever once respected the value within it? You thought my dirt-stained hands were filthy, but it is these hands that grow the food that you and your family eat. You laughed at my old lorry, but without that lorry your fancy dinner table would be empty. Asen stopped and turned to face him, his eyes a mixture of deep pity and cold contempt. You didn't destroy my pride. You destroyed yourself. Your arrogant philosophy of judging people only by their wealth and status, that is what brought down your castle. I merely blew a small puff of wind to show you how fragile your sand castle truly was. Kian Hok was speechless. Sing's words pierced his heart. You want me to save Global Harvest? Why should I? A company that deceived consumers and squeezed farmers dry just to line your own pockets. Why does a company like that deserve to be saved? It would be far more beneficial for society to build an honest company that understands the value of the land in its place. Despair. A dark shadow of despair fell over Kian Hok's face. He realized Asen wasn't seeking revenge. He was delivering judgment on his flawed values and everything he had built upon them. Go home and pay the price for your actions. That is the only penance you can offer to yourself and to the world. With that, Asen turned back to tend to his crops. Kian Hak could no longer stand there. He stumbled out of the greenhouse. The world outside was bright, but his vision was plunged into darkness. He knew it was all over. A few days later, Global Harvest officially filed for bankruptcy. Tan Kian Hok lost everything he had worked for his entire life. The mansion and luxury cars were seized by creditors. His family was forced to move into a small rented HDB flat on the outskirts of the city. Once symbols of Singapore's high society, they were now living the very life of the common people they had so thoroughly scorned. Revenge was served cold and complete. Everything had turned to ash. The old HDB flat the Tan family now occupied was smaller than the master bathroom of their former mansion. Mold crept up the corners of the walls and a small window offered only a view of the grey concrete wall of the next block. For a family accustomed to living under the glow of crystal chandeliers, the dim fluorescent light was a constant reminder of their miserable new reality. The hardest part wasn't the poverty itself, but the condescending stares of the world and the despair that gnawed at them from within. The downfall of the Tan family became the juiciest piece of gossip among the city's elite. People who once bowed to them now averted their eyes on the street or whispered cruel jokes behind their backs. The person who struggled the most was their daughter Chloe. For a girl whose world had revolved around designer clothes, exclusive parties and luxury, this new reality was a living hell. Her father drank himself into a stupor every day, lamenting his lost empire, while her mother, stripped of her elegance, did nothing but complain. To make ends meet, Chloe had to find a job for the first time in her life. She started working as a waitress in a cafe on Orchard Road. There she was forced to confront the world she had lost every single day. Her former friends draped in the latest fashions would come in laughing and chatting while she had to watch from behind the counter in her drab uniform. Sometimes they would recognize her, their faces showing shock, pity, or even contempt. Each time she felt a mortifying shame that tore her apart. One day Chloe came face to face with Junji at the cafe. He looked more mature and confident than before. Standing beside him was another woman, simply dressed but with a bright, genuine smile. They were chatting happily as they ordered their coffee. Chloe wanted to disappear, but there was nowhere to hide. Junji recognized her first. His voice was a mixture of surprise and a hint of sympathy. Chloe's face flushed with shame. She couldn't look him in the eye, acutely aware of her worn-out uniform and pale makeup-free face. "Hi Junji. It's been a while." An awkward silence fell between them. The woman next to Junji, sensing the tension, broke the silence with a cheerful greeting. "Hi, I'm Sarah, Junji's junior from university." Chloe forced a smile. The spot where she should have been standing was now occupied by another woman, a woman who looked far happier than she had ever been. Junji didn't say anything more. He simply took their coffee, gave a slight nod, and left the cafe. Chloe stared blankly at the empty space where he had stood, hot tears streaming down her cheeks. That night Chloe returned home to find her father passed out drunk and her mother staring blankly at the television. She looked from one to the other and wondered where did it all go wrong. She remembered the day of the formal meeting. Junji's father arriving in the lorry. her parents' horrified reactions, and her own cowardice standing by silently and letting her parents have their way. What if she had shown a little more courage? Then what if she had defended Junji in front of her parents? What if she had tried to see past the old lorry and recognize the sincerity of the man driving it? Would things have been different? Regret always comes too late. She realized with painful clarity how foolish and materialistic she had been. Perhaps she hadn't loved Lim Junji the person, but the idea of him, his good education, his respectable appearance, and the stable future he represented. She had thrown away her chance at genuine love and a simple precious happiness. From that day on, Chloe began to change. She stopped blaming the past and wallowing in self-pity. Instead, she focused on her work. She saved up enough money to rent a small room for herself and enrolled in a part-time degree course. For the first time, she felt the joy of achieving something on her own. Her life was still difficult, but she was no longer miserable. In losing everything, she was learning invaluable lessons she had never known before: the value of hard work and true self-respect, things that no amount of money could ever buy. The painful downfall of the Tan family was perhaps a long overdue but necessary process of growth for them all. While the Tan family languished in the ashes of their former lives, Lim Ah-seng's kingdom was preparing for a new era. With the collapse of the giant global harvest, the market needed a new order, and Ah-seng did not miss the opportunity. He sheathed the sword of revenge and took up the plow to cultivate a new future. His first move was to build a symbiotic ecosystem. He reached out to the small and medium-sized farms that had been left in crisis by global harvest bankruptcy. Instead of exploiting them as global harvest had done, he proposed a partnership of equals. Aggravation respects the value of your sweat, he told them. We will guarantee a stable purchase price for your crops regardless of market fluctuations, so you can focus on farming with peace of mind. Furthermore, we will share our smart farm technology and expertise with you so we can all grow together and produce even better quality crops. The farmers were skeptical at first, but Ah-seng's sincere proposal and unprecedented terms gradually won them over. He did more than just buy their produce. He provided them with advanced agricultural technology, access to agrivation's efficient distribution network, and even financial support. Honest farmers from all over the region began to unite under the aggravation banner, forming a massive cooperative community. This was an unprecedented innovation in the region's agricultural history. The old top-down model of a large corporation dominating and exploiting farmers was replaced by a horizontal network of collaboration and shared growth. Next, he redefined the relationship with consumers. Building on the success of the Honest Crop, he officially launched a new retail brand under the Aggravation name. The Aggravation stores were more than just places to sell goods. They were spaces of trust where producers and consumers could connect directly. One wall of every store featured photos and stories of the farmers who grew the produce, with QR codes linking to real-time feeds of their farms. There were regular farm-to-table workshops for children, and farmers themselves would visit the stores to explain their produce and share recipes. Consumers were ecstatic. They were no longer just buying products based on price tags and labels. They were consuming stories they knew, whose hard work and what philosophy went into the food they ate. Aggravation became more than a brand for safe food. It became a cultural phenomenon that championed honest values. At the center of all these changes alongside Ah-seng was his son Junji. Having witnessed his father's entire campaign, Junji was profoundly changed. He understood that his father had not just settled a personal score but had sounded a warning against the flawed values of modern society. He chose not to simply inherit the business from a position of comfort. Instead, he started from the very bottom. He worked alongside new recruits in the greenhouses, getting his hands dirty and learning the fundamentals of farming. He traveled across the region, visiting partner farms, listening to their struggles and learning to solve problems on the ground. One clear afternoon, Junji was driving his father's old lorry across a vast field. It was the same lorry that had brought him so much shame on that fateful day. But now it was no longer a symbol of embarrassment. The rattling engine sounded as steady and strong as his father's heartbeat, and the smell of the earth was more fragrant than any cologne. He finally understood. What his father had fought to protect wasn't just a poor farmer's pride. It was the value of the land, the honesty of sweat, and the lives of all the people who depended on it. In the distance, his father Lim Ah-seng watched him with a proud smile. His face, etched with deep wrinkles, now held an equally deep sense of contentment. The revenge was over, but his real story was just beginning. Through his son's hands and through the honest sweat of all who worked with them, he was planting the seeds of a healthier, more prosperous future. It was a magnificent legacy that no corporation, no amount of money or power could ever replicate, a legacy being built by a son of the soil. While aggravation was building a new agricultural ecosystem and thriving, time seemed to stand still for the Tan family. They were trapped between the wounds of the past and the misery of the present. Tan Kien Hok in particular could not accept reality. He spent his nights drinking, roaring with futile rage like the king of a fallen empire. Who am I? How could I lose everything to a dirt digger? His anger was often directed at his wife and daughter. This is all your fault. If you hadn't been so obsessed with luxury, if she hadn't met that boy from a no-name family, we wouldn't be in this mess. The small flat became a battlefield with Eleanor's shrill screams answering her husband's accusations. Chloe was the one who suffered most in this domestic hell. By day she endured scornful looks at the cafe, by night she endured her parents' endless quarrels. One evening on her way home she encountered a group of rough-looking men on the stairs of her apartment block. They were banging violently on her door shouting, "Tan, open up, pay what you owe." They were loan sharks, the Alongs. It was the dark money her father had turned to in his final desperate attempt to save his company. Chloe froze in terror. The men seeing her approach turned their attention to her. "You Tan's daughter, looks like you have to pay your father's debt," one of them sneered, grabbing her arm. "You're a pretty one. We could sell you to a good place, make some decent money." Chloe screamed and struggled, but she was no match for his strength. Just then a familiar voice cut through the air. "Let her go." She turned her head. Standing there was the last person she ever expected to see, Lim Junji. Junji stood protectively in front of her, his eyes glaring at the loan sharks. "What do you think you're doing? Get away from her now." The loan sharks laughed. "Who is this joker? Playing the white knight, what's it to you? Don't you dare touch her. I'll pay you the money." At Junji's words the men's eyes widened. Chloe was just as stunned. "Junji, why? Why are you?" "Shh, just stay quiet for a moment," Junji said, his voice steady. He took a business card from his wallet and tossed it to them. "Lim Junji, head of corporate planning, Aggravation Holdings. Contact my office tomorrow with the total amount Mr. Tan owes, including principal and the legally stipulated interest. I will transfer the full sum. The condition is that you never show your faces to this family again." Aggravation Holdings. The name changed everything. The loan sharks were not ignorant of the fastest growing and most powerful company in the country. They exchanged glances and their aggressive demeanor instantly vanished, replaced by obsequious smiles. "Oh, our apologies, Mr. Lim, we didn't realize. We will definitely be in touch tomorrow." As the loan shark scurried away, the tension left Chloe and she collapsed onto the ground, bursting into tears. Junji silently took off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "It's okay, Chloe. Everything is going to be okay now." His warm voice only made her sob harder. The man she had so cruelly abandoned had appeared to save her at her most desperate moment. "Why? Why are you helping me? It's over between us. After what my father did to you and your father." Junji looked up at the night sky with a sad smile. "Revenge was my father's affair and I thought it was all over when he succeeded. But he told me something. He said revenge is not complete when you destroy your enemy. It is complete only when you plant a new seed in their place." He looked at Chloe and continued, "I don't hold any grudges against your father. He is paying the price for his mistakes. And you, Chloe, you did nothing wrong. You were a product of your environment. I don't want to see you suffer like this. I believe you deserve a chance to live a decent life again." Junji took a large envelope from his car and handed it to her. "My father found out that your father owned a small plot of farmland registered as a personal asset, so it wasn't seized by creditors. This envelope contains the deed to that land and some funds to help you start over. You can build a new life there." Chloe's hands trembled as she took the envelope. It wasn't just money and land. It was forgiveness. A second chance. It was the final act of grace from Lim Ah-sung and his son. "How can we accept this? My father always says the land itself has no sin. It gives back an honest reward to anyone who toils on it. He hopes that this will be an opportunity for your father to rediscover the value of the earth and the importance of honest sweat." That night, for the first time in a long time, Chloe saw a glimmer of hope. A small warm ember had been tossed into the darkness of her life. It was an ironic and a miraculous hope offered by the son of the man who had brought about her family's ruin. She was beginning to understand. True strength wasn't about crushing your enemies. It was about having the courage and compassion to help them get back on their feet. Faced with a new opportunity offered by Junji, the members of the Tan family reacted differently. Eleanor, clinging to her last shred of pride, was aghast. What? You expect us to accept charity from that countryside old man? We are not beggars. I would rather starve to death. Tan Kien-hok said nothing. He just stared into space, clutching a bottle of liquor. He seemed to have completely given up, a man whose spirit was broken. But Chloe was different. Despite her parents' objections, she decided to accept the offer. She knew this was the last chance for her and her family to get back on their feet. Mother, father, this isn't charity. It's the only chance we have to start again. We can't just sit here and blame each other for the rest of our lives. We have to do something. After days of arguments, Chloe's determination won. They left the small HDB flat in Singapore and moved to the small farm in the countryside that Junji had arranged. The farm was smaller and more run down than they had imagined. There was only a dilapidated farmhouse and a few plots of land overgrown with weeds. For Kien-hok and Eleanor, who had lived their entire lives in urban luxury, it felt like exile. How are we supposed to live in a place like this? Eleanor burst into tears upon arrival. Kien-hok just stood there stunned. Only Chloe was different. She rolled up her sleeves, picked up a sickle, and began to clear the weeds. Her hands quickly became covered in dirt and blisters, but she didn't stop. She was determined to find a seed of hope in this wasteland. The first few months were hell. Her parents did nothing, leaving all the work to her. They were still trapped in the past, blaming each other and Chloe for their misfortune. Chloe bore it all in silence. She woke up at dawn to work the fields and cooked meals for her parents. She grew thinner by the day, but her eyes grew stronger. The change began subtly. One day, as Chloe was struggling to move a heavy rock in the field, Kien-hok, who had been watching from the house, came out and helped her. Move aside. This is how you do it. It was manual labor he had never done in his life, yet he managed. Chloe looked at her father with surprise and emotion. That night, for the first time in months, her father didn't drink. Instead, he ate dinner with Chloe, his hands stained with soil. From that day on, Kien-hok began to change. He started helping Chloe in the fields. It was awkward and exhausting at first, but he worked without complaint. As he planted seeds, watered them, and pulled weeds, he began to feel something he hadn't felt in a very long time, a sense of purpose. Watching the miracle of life as his own sweat nurtured tiny sprouts into lush green plants and then into bountiful fruit, a small seed of change began to grow in his own withered heart. He was no longer the man who chased money and success. He was learning humility from the honesty of the land, a farmer discovering the value of life. Eleanor changed too. At first she scoffed at her husband and daughter working in the dirt, but as she saw the life return to their faces, her heart began to soften. She started to cook simple meals for them and tidy up the farmhouse. The irritable expression on her face was replaced by a gentle smile. By autumn, their small field was abundant with sweet potatoes, cabbages, and radishes, the fruits of their shared labor. They cooked a simple dinner with the crops they had harvested themselves. It couldn't compare to the food at fine dining restaurants, but it was the most delicious and happiest meal they had ever had. During the meal, Kien-hok looked at Chloe and said softly, "Chloe, I'm sorry." That one word contained a world of meaning. Tears welled up in Chloe's eyes. She smiled silently and held her father's hand. Their wounds hadn't fully healed, but they had now found the strength to support each other and move forward. In the land of despair, where they thought they had lost everything, they had found the most precious thing of all, their family. Perhaps this was the true revenge Lim Ah-seng had intended all along. Not destruction, but genuine rebirth and a new beginning. While the Tan family was finding new meaning in their rural life, Aggravation was embarking on another massive transformation. Lim Ah-seng announced his full retirement, handing over all management responsibilities to his son Junji. While it was a natural step given his age, the industry was more interested in what he would do next. Defying all expectations, Ah-seng used Aggravation's vast assets to establish a non-profit organization, the Singapore Agriculture Advancement Foundation. The foundation's mission was clear: to support the sustainable development of Singapore's agriculture and to create a society where farmers are respected. His first project was a young farmers incubation program. It selected young people who were passionate about farming but lacked capital and skills, provided them with free training at Aggravation's smart farms for several years, and then offered them startup capital and farmland at low interest rates. Word spread quickly and aspiring young farmers from all over the country flocked to the program. As the new CEO of Aggravation, Junji oversaw the project, generously sharing his knowledge and experience with the next generation. He was no longer the young man burning with a desire for revenge, but a confident leader shouldering the future of the nation's agriculture. Sung held only the title of foundation chairman, and spent most of his time in his own small garden, still wearing his old work clothes, finding simple happiness with his hands in the soil. One day an unexpected visitor came to his farm. It was Tan Kien-huk. He wasn't in an expensive suit but in simple work clothes, carrying a basket of fruit he had grown himself. The shapes were imperfect, but they were filled with sincerity. Sung wasn't surprised. He welcomed him like an old friend. The two men sat and drank rice wine in silence. After a long pause, Kien-huk spoke first, his voice filled with a deep humility. "Thank you. And I was sorry." He didn't say more, but those few words conveyed 1,000 emotions. Sung simply clinked his glass against Kien-huk's. He knew forgiveness was an act of the heart, not of words. "How is the farm work?" Sung asked. Kien-huk looked down at his calloused hands and smiled faintly. "It's tough. My whole body aches every day. But my heart is at peace. I never knew that growing something with my own hands could bring such joy." He hesitated for a moment, then took a small envelope from his pocket and offered it to Sung. "This is a little money we saved from our harvest. It's not much, but I'd like to donate it to your foundation. Please use it to help other farmers who are struggling like we were." Sung didn't take the envelope. Instead, he gently held Kien-huk's hand. "Use that money for your family. And instead donate your experience to our foundation." "My experience?" "Yes. Kien-huk, you were one of the best distribution experts in this country. Your experience of failure will be a more valuable lesson to these young farmers than any success story. Come to our foundation. Share your knowledge and wisdom with the younger generation. Be a beacon for them so they don't repeat the same mistakes you made." Tears welled up in Kien-huk's eyes. He thought he was a useless failure, but Sung had found value even in his downfall, offering him a new role and a new sense of honor. It was the greatest form of forgiveness and salvation, something money could never buy. "You would let me do that?" "Of course. The land accepts everything, good seeds and bad weeds alike. Shouldn't people be the same?" That day the two old farmers drank until sunset. There was no longer any resentment or revenge between them, only a silent understanding and respect conveyed through their wrinkled faces and rough hands. A bitter feud had been reborn as a beautiful reconciliation. After accepting Lima Sing's offer, Tan Kien-huk's life entered a new chapter. As a consultant for the Singapore Agriculture Advancement Foundation, he began to impart his distribution expertise to young farmers. At first, many were skeptical. What could a failed businessman possibly teach them? But Kien-huk's lectures exceeded all expectations. He didn't start with his glorious successes but with his catastrophic failures. "Everyone, I am a man who has walked the path you should never take. I saw consumers as mere numbers and agricultural products as mere commodities. As a result, I lost everything. Don't be like me. You must think about how to deliver the value and philosophy contained in every single crop you grow to the consumer's table. That is the key to a sustainable business." His honest confession resonated more deeply than any business theory. He taught the young farmers practical skills in marketing, branding, and customer relations, all illustrated with vivid examples from his own experience. His knowledge, once used to build a corporate empire, was now combined with the passion of young farmers to create incredible synergy. Chloe and Eleanor were no longer shackled by the past either. With support from the foundation, Chloe transformed her small farm into a therapeutic farm. It became a space where city dwellers weary from the stresses of urban life could come to heal their emotional wounds by working the land and cooking with the food they grew. Her farm became immensely popular, and Chloe found new happiness in helping others overcome their own struggles. Eleanor also found her place. She took charge of preparing simple, hearty farm-to-table meals for the visitors. Though she started reluctantly, seeing the smiles on people's faces as they enjoyed her food brought back a joy she had long forgotten. She no longer craved designer handbags or fine jewelry. Her soil-stained apron and a word of sincere praise from a visitor became her greatest source of pride. The Tan family was no longer wealthy, but their lives were richer than ever before. In place of the money and status they had lost, they had gained love for one another and a true appreciation for the meaning of life. Meanwhile, Junji, at the helm of Aggravation, was looking beyond Singapore's shores. He wanted to share Singapore's advanced smart farm technology and its model of symbiotic agriculture with the world. Like his father, he wasn't content with simply exporting produce for profit. He launched a global initiative to transfer agrivations technology to developing nations, helping them build self-sustaining agricultural industries. By his side was Sarah, his university junior. Bright and compassionate, she had become his most steadfast partner. Together they traveled the world, dedicating their youth to spreading the value of honest work. One day after returning from an overseas trip, Junji went to see his father. Ah-seng was still in his small garden quietly tending to his plants. "Father, I'm back. Welcome home, son. You've worked hard." They sat together on the edge of the field watching the sunset. Junji proudly reported on his recent achievements, how a smart farm was built in a barren part of Africa, how poor farmers in Southeast Asia had found new hope. Ah-seng listened in silence, his face filled with pride. "Junji, my son," he said softly. "I feel like my revenge is finally complete." Junji understood what his father meant. The revenge his father spoke of wasn't about destruction and hatred. It was about moving beyond forgiveness and reconciliation to plant new hope for everyone, thereby making the world a slightly better place. That was the grand and complete revenge his father had envisioned. "Father, that old lorry of yours, may I inherit it now?" At Junji's words, Lim Ah-seng grinned. He nodded and patted his son's shoulder firmly. His old lorry was no longer just a personal heirloom. It had become a symbol of a great spirit, a belief in the honesty of the land and the value of sweat that would be passed down to all who shared those values, standing tall and proud in the field. Years passed, and a sense of peaceful order settled over their lives. One spring day, a letter arrived at Lim Ah-seng's farm. The sender was Chloe Tan. It was the first time she had contacted him personally since the incident with Junji. Ah-seng wiped his hands and carefully opened the letter. The handwriting was elegant and sincere. It began with a quiet reflection on the past and a heartfelt expression of gratitude. "Dear Mr. Lim, I hesitated for a long time before writing this. I was afraid that just seeing my name would bring back unpleasant memories. But I wanted to gather the courage to tell you what has been in my heart for so long. My family and I are living a new life thanks to you. If not for the hand you extended to us in our moment of despair, we would not be where we are today. We have finally learned that there are things in this world more precious than money and fame, the joy of working with our hands and the love of a family that supports one another. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts." The letter went on to describe her therapeutic farm, painting a warm picture of how people from the city found solace in the soil and how her family in turn found a new kind of happiness in caring for them. The end of the letter contained a surprising invitation. "We are holding a small celebration at our farm soon. It will be a simple gathering to share food we've grown ourselves and to celebrate the new hope we've found with the people who have been part of our journey. We would be deeply honored if you and Mr. Lim Junji would attend as our special guests. I know we have no right to ask this of you, but we truly want to show you how we have changed and how we are living our new lives. We feel this is the only way we can truly repay your kindness. Please come and see for yourself the beautiful fruits that have grown from the seeds you planted." After reading the letter, Ah-seng looked out the window in silence for a long time. He felt a long-held knot of emotion in his heart quietly unravel. He picked up the phone and called his son. "Junji, I need you to clear your schedule this weekend. There is a place we need to go together." On the appointed weekend, Ah-seng and Junji arrived at Chloe's farm. It was small and cozy, but every corner radiated warmth and life. A simple hand-painted sign at the entrance read "A Community Garden." Chloe was the first to greet them, her face bright with a genuine smile. She was no longer the glamorous, insecure young woman of the past. Her sun-kissed skin and serene expression showed that she had finally found peace. "Thank you so much for coming, Mr. Lim Junji." Behind her, Kian Hok and Eleanor also approached and bowed deeply. Their faces showed no trace of past resentment or shame, only sincere welcome and gratitude. The celebration was simple but heartwarming. Long wooden tables were set up in the yard laden with fresh dishes made from the farm's harvest. The guests were all people who had come to the farm with their own wounds, but their faces were now filled with hope and laughter. As the meal progressed, Kian Hak rose and approached Ah-seng and Junji, offering them a small flask. "This is all we have to offer our esteemed guests. It's rice wine we brewed ourselves from rice we grew in our own field. Please have a glass." Ah-seng and Junji accepted the glasses without a word. The three men raised their glasses and clinked them together. The clear, crisp sound echoed in the warm afternoon sun, a toast that seemed to wash away all past grievances and signal the beginning of a new relationship. From a short distance away, Chloe and Junji's fiancée Sarah stood side by side watching the scene. Their eyes met, and in that shared glance there was no awkwardness or jealousy, only a quiet mutual support for each other's lives. They exchanged faint smiles. The past was the past. What mattered was the present and the future. The two families, once entangled in a bitter feud, were now healing each other's wounds and forging a new bond. The small celebration at Chloe's farm left a deep impression on everyone, especially Lim Ah-seng. It inspired him to reflect on his life and how he wanted to spend his remaining years. He realized again the importance of not just cultivating the land but also cultivating the human heart and restoring relationships. Back at his own farm, Ah-seng began to plan the next project for his foundation. His new goal was to move beyond training farmers and sharing technology and to use agriculture to revive the sense of community that had been lost in modern society. He launched the Intergenerational Harmony Farm. The project connected elderly retirees who were often isolated with young people who felt lost in the competitive world. The seniors would share their life wisdom and farming experience with the youth, while the youth would bring new energy and technological know-how to the seniors, each filling a void in the other's life. The project was a resounding success. The two generations, initially awkward around each other, quickly bonded over their shared work in the soil. They became friends, sharing stories and meals. In a society rife with generational conflict, Ah-seng's farm became a small miracle, a space where different generations could understand and respect one another. When Tang Kien-hok heard about this, he was deeply moved. He volunteered to join the project not just as a consultant but as a hands-on manager. The man who once commanded thousands of employees was now sweating alongside seniors and youths doing manual labor. In this new role, he found the greatest satisfaction of his later life, learning to be not an authoritarian leader but a true member of a community. Meanwhile, Junji continued to build on his father's philosophy at Agrivision, combining agriculture with culture. He developed a large portion of Agrivision's land into a multi-purpose cultural space. On weekends, it hosted a bustling farmers market alongside an arts market where young artists could perform and exhibit their work. People came not just to shop but to enjoy a day out with their families, picnicking, listening to music and enjoying art in a beautiful natural setting. Agrivision transformed from a mere agricultural company into a vibrant cultural hub for all. In this endeavor, Junji and Chloe naturally became collaborative partners. Her therapeutic farm became an important part of Agrivision's cultural projects. They were no longer past lovers but respected colleagues, working together to build a new future for Singapore's agriculture. Time passed and eventually Junji and Sarah got married. The wedding was not held in a fancy hotel but on the sprawling lawn of Agrivision. Instead of a lavish buffet, guests enjoyed healthy, delicious food made from fresh produce grown by Agrivision and its partner farms. Lim Ah-seng officiated the ceremony. He didn't use flowery language but shared a simple philosophy that had guided his life. Love, he said, is like farming. You must plant honest seeds in each other's hearts, water them with trust and patiently pull the weeds of doubt. There will be times of drought and flood, but if you hold each other's hands and work together, you will overcome any trial and harvest the most beautiful and bountiful fruits in the world. Listening from the audience, Tang Kien-hok and Chloe nodded quietly. They too had learned the value of that simple truth through their own painful failures. The wedding was a true celebration of harmony where all those who had been hurt in the past could bless each other and cheer for a new beginning. Several more years passed after Junji's wedding. The world had changed in many ways but Lim Ah-seng's farm remained. Now a white-haired old man, Ah-seng spent his quiet retirement teaching his great-grandchildren how to feel the earth. Agrivision grew into a global enterprise under Junji's leadership, but it never lost its founding principle, the value of the land. A significant portion of its profits continued to be channeled through the foundation back into society, benefiting farmers and the underprivileged. Tang Kien-hok became one of the most respected elders at the foundation. He guided countless young farmers to success, sharing lessons from his own failures and rejoiced in their achievements as if they were his own. He had finally found true fulfillment, not in wealth and fame, but in service and sharing. Chloe too had become a leading expert in agricultural therapy, bringing hope and comfort to many. On a bright autumn day, a special event was held at Agrivision, the first ever Singapore Farmers Festival. Conceived by Junji, the festival was a celebration of the hard work of all farmers and a day for the urban and rural communities to come together. The highlight was the Farmer of the Year award. The recipient of the grand prize was none other than Li Ma-sung. He refused to go on stage, but his son Junji and Tan Kien-hak escorted him up, one on each arm. Amidst the thunderous applause of thousands, Ah-sun stood at the microphone. He looked out at the crowd, his eyes misty. He saw his happy family, his former rival who was now a friend, the young farmers he had nurtured, and the countless city dwellers who believed in his philosophy. "I am just an ignorant farmer who has played in the dirt his whole life," he began, his first words echoing an old insult. But now the meaning was completely different, his voice filled with both pride and humility. "I am not worthy of such a great award. I believe this award is not for me but for every single person who toils honestly on this land. The land never lies. It gives back exactly what we put in. If we plant love instead of hate, in the fields of each other's hearts, and faith instead of mistrust, I believe our society, like this bountiful autumn harvest, will become more beautiful and prosperous." As he finished, the roar of applause filled the autumn sky. After the ceremony, Ah-sun climbed onto his old lorry. His son Junji sat beside him. In the back, Tan Kien-hak, Chloe, and his young great-grandchildren all piled in. The lorry, a relic that had started this entire story, drove through the festive crowd heading towards the golden fields. On that rattling lorry, those who were once enemies, lovers, and rivals were now one big family watching the sunset together. The old lorry, once a symbol of ignorance and poverty, was now a symbol of forgiveness, reconciliation, and new beginnings. Chugging along through the golden fields, Ah-sun placed a hand on his son's shoulder. His long, arduous revenge had finally created the most beautiful scenery in the world and was quietly coming to an end. And in its place, a new story of love and hope, as steadfast and honest as the earth itself, was just beginning to sprout.